morning, Zachary. It's great to see you again. It's
Good
2
morning.
days in a row, for gosh sakes. And
Yeah.
Alistair's the same. He hasn't come on camera yet, but he's pretend. There he is. There. So you're mobile, I assume, and Zach isn't. This is not going to be the world's longest meeting, but I think it's very important. I just want to go over a couple of things. This is the educator practice and teacher practice and all these other educated bodies committee meeting on the 28th of April. It's our April meeting. And we've had a very successful beginning of the year with a lot of information that we got from the teacher educator practice preparation, different from different universities. I think we should pursue that. We only had one ask in the budget, and that was to have Mary Levy do a follow-up report on teacher retention in 2021-22. Also mentioned something I sent an email to all of you about something I thought about, and I'd just like to have a small discussion about it right now. We've talked about a teacher committee and talked about a principals committee. And I thought about it yesterday, and I'd like to just find out, Alistair and Zach, how you feel about, I was thinking about assistant principals for two reasons. One, most assistant principals desire is to be a principal, but they're also the conduit between the principal and the teachers. And I thought that, and we haven't, I mean, I don't remember on my 3 years on the board ever having a assistant principal speak about anything. And I think it would be an interesting, valuable source to have at least a conversation. It could be some kind of a bigger meeting with assistant principals, or just to throw it out there as an idea about having them be involved, not only as someone who wants to be a principal, but also as someone who is delegated with because principals right now are really just overwhelmed with everything. Not that they don't pass it on to the assistant principals. So I just would like to get your feedback about that, Zach and Alistair.
Let me just make sure I'm tracking. Are you thinking for like the advisory panel, or like just having assistant principals come for a meeting to share?
Well, I haven't thought through that. That's what I wanted to bounce off you. I'm thinking that maybe something on like the student advisory committee, but with assistant principals as a committee.
Yeah, I mean, just for our own capacity, I would encourage us to think about, like, could we combine and create space? I do like the idea of giving voice to assistant principals, because you're right, we rarely, if ever, hear from them. And if assistant principals were on a panel with the principal, I would imagine that might stifle discussion in a sense, because they would be taking the lead of said principal. The only thing, and so, yeah, I think that is something we should explore. I just know many assistant principals wear different hats. And so in some buildings, it's more academic, and other buildings it's more operational. And so perhaps just making sure we have a representation across the board would be helpful if we go that route.
Yeah, I agree. And it was just something I thought about, but I think that I know that I talked to a lot of assistant principals and principals, and it would be valuable conversations if it could be, and it could be just a one-time meeting where we just have people just sort of talk about things that could be helpful, because I know principals are so busy. Alistair, what do you think?
I think that makes sense. I think a one-off makes more sense than a regular ask, right? Because I think it's also on us to demonstrate that their time spent with us is actually worth it, right? I mean, and so the more discreet, I think we can make that, hey, we want your perspective on 1, 2, 3 questions for now, and then we'll check back in when we have
Like
another
a
series of
forum or
questions to ask. I think that's great.
something like that, a forum where we could just invite the assistant principals. Maybe we could start with the,
Roundtable.
huh?
We could do a round table. We've never done one of those.
Well,
It's
that'd
just,
be cool.
it's a different title for the same thing, I think.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
one thing I would just throw out too, that might be an opportunity. We've talked a lot about, and we've, for years now, like the teacher attrition crisis, and I think it's going to get worse. And what
Oh, yeah.
I'm hearing a lot of people say is we need to get in front of this. And so that might provide an opportunity for us to hear from teachers and assistant principals from both a practitioner perspective, but a leadership perspective around like what could the city be doing to kind of heat off what is expected.
Great. That's a great idea. What do you think, Alistair, about that as a focus? I mean, we could, because teacher retention is part of our focus anyway.
That makes a lot of sense. Yep.
Good. Caitlin, and what am I missing?
I was just going to personally ask if the committee had any interest in staff putting together information about like a state-to-state grow your own comparison. Also like something on professional development, also a state-to-state comparison. And also if you guys would maybe want a memo also if we try to attempt to try to track the progress or get more information about DCPS's teacher mentorship initiatives. And also if there's something similar on the charter side too. So that could be something that staff could help contribute to building the committee's knowledge bank.
Good. The mentorship is something that I was going to bring up next, as a matter of fact. John Paul?
I have another slight wrench to throw into the committee's work. I think I shared with everyone maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago that the U.S. Department of Education had announced that apprenticeship programs can also now be used for teachers. And so there is actually a meeting with the DME and staff tomorrow to talk about apprenticeships and sort of what the district should focus on. And my intention at that meeting was to talk with them specifically about teacher apprenticeships and using some of that WIOA money. And I don't remember what WIOA stands for, but it's Workforce Investment Opportunity Act, I think maybe. But there's quite a bit of federal money available for potential apprenticeship programs. And I think that may be something that could also supplement that grow your own type programming. So it may be another angle that the committee wants to consider in terms of doing, research or suggesting opportunities for that.
Great. And that's when Caitlin brought up mentorship, the mentorship program really has to do with teachers who've already been hired. And the other thing that we've been talking about with the Grow Your Own programs is before the teachers are hired. So that would fit right into that. Now, when they're talking about apprentices, is there when I think apprentice, I drove by the Newport News shipbuilding apprentice program the other day. And so that was my concept of apprentice when I was younger in Norfolk. But the definition of an apprentice teacher, what is that? What is the concept of that?
Yeah, so some of it is, we'd have to design it for our own workforce. Tennessee has really been the sort of leader on this type of programming, and there are some articles. I just put one in the chat, but
can you email that to us too,
yeah,
please?
And we could do some additional research on how it works in Tennessee, and maybe even talk to some of the folks there. But the idea is that the teacher occupation then becomes a sort of apprenticed program. So it creates that pipeline for individuals who want to have grow your own programs, but need some support in those types of programs. Because apprentices are generally paid and they're go through a particular type of program to be certified in that department. and it doesn't necessarily then have to go through, college type of program or not.
Oh, that's,
It really does depend on how it's going to work. But yeah, we will send you this article and maybe a couple others that I know Caitlin has put together. Some really strong things there, but it may be something else that to add to the portfolio of this work on teacher workforce.
and we're fast forwarding through everything, but maybe we could get the people from Tennessee to come meet with us at our next meeting. Caitlin, just to put that down as an idea.
Yeah, sure.
The other thing about mentorship, I think that should be one of our focuses this year, because I'm still sort of lost about what OSSI is doing about mentorship, and especially what DCPS is doing about mentorship. And I'd like to hear from the charter schools too. So maybe that would be something to put, as Zach would call it, in a bucket that we could use for maybe our next month or the month after next for our meeting. Because, this system isn't going to change without a huge difference in mentorship for new teachers. We talk about the grow your own programs, and I think we've got at least we've got our hooks into it a little bit, but the mentorship is not happening in the public school, in the DCPS. And I don't know what OSSI has to do with that. It would seem to me that would be something that they would be focused on.
Caitlin, to your earlier point and to Frazier's push around mentorship, is it possible to do a state-by-state comparison to see if that is a focus of states and
Yeah, absolutely.
attracting and retaining teachers? And I would say, I know this year's data is probably not available, but if there is any data on trends across states around teachers leaving the classroom during the pandemic, that too could be hopeful data just to anchor the conversation as well.
I hate to think what the numbers are going to be like after, because I don't know what's happening in your ward, but in my ward, we've had a big turnover in principals. And I would imagine that's it. What about yours, Zach?
Same, and not just principals, but super veteran principals that are just, which is concerning.
What, Alistair, I know you don't have as many principals as the rest of us, but what about in Ward 2?
So I think zooming out, Dr. O'Leary, I still think that it's I can't remember if this particular issue is part of the original Mary Levy report. I think it is, right? So, but I'd love to continue to kind of tie our focus for the committee back to what we've already funded as part of the last research, and use that to help inform what this next research study does, rather than try to tackle multiple themes at the same time, right? I'd rather see us push one thing through all the way.
Are you talking about the mentorship and the grow your own?
Exactly. Yep. So which one, right? I think they're interrelated for sure.
The thing about the teacher retention, though, is we can't, until we get the Mary Levy report, we don't know what the numbers look like. So in the interim, we could be focusing, we can't do anything about who's left until we know who's left.
Yeah. At the same time, we've already
I know
commissioned
what
a report,
you're saying. Yeah.
right? And had recommendations. It's not that the problem has gone away, right? Since we've gotten those recommendations. I think that mentorship,
you're breaking up on us a little bit,
if I remember correctly. So I would love to see what was recommended in that. Okay.
Okay, you're breaking up on us a little bit. I don't know if it's Rock Creek Park or something like that. I mean, we heard what you said though. Anything else, Zach? You're on mute.
Just to say that I think a lot of these things are interconnected and all influence teacher retention. So the mentorship piece, the leadership turnover piece. And, you know, some of this, I think staff could provide a lift around like doing that state-by-state comparison. But I'm really interested in us as a committee going forward with this discussion with teachers and perhaps leaders, and the leader lens coming from APs to your push to sometime this spring, perhaps, or summer, to just get ahead of like what recommendations we might be able to produce that might accompany the report that is coming from Dr. Levy. Because
the thing about the teacher retention, Alistair, is that we have put out recommendations because of the reports that we had on teacher retention or teacher attrition or whatever you want to call it. But they haven't been acted on. And some of those recommendations had to do with mentorship and had to do with grow your own program.
Yeah, so I would love to follow up on those two recommendations and think about how we can actually, I think it's actually a good one to focus on, right? But if we can, if we select that, I'd love to see kind of what are the barriers to getting it through, really deepen.
Okay,
Take a deeper dive into those two to focus in on.
Okay, you're still sort of breaking up, but we're hearing about 75% of each sentence, I guess. But I got the gist of it. Caitlin, anything else? I think we covered a lot.
Yeah, I think that covers at least my wonderings. So we
Okay.
can end early if you want.
I'm thinking about, I really would like to have I think those panels for our next meeting. I'd really like to hear from OSSI or from DCPS about, and we can pull it back to teacher retention, just to find out what their goals are. Because we've given them recommendations in our resolutions on the teacher retention report, but we haven't really heard back from them. Do you think, John Paul, maybe you would answer this better than anyone. Do you think OSSI would send anybody to talk to us about that?
We can ask. I mean, I think, you know, one of the major recommendations that we had is the legislation as well. And I think that's another thing that we can talk about. I mean, you know, we were promised a hearing and we're still sort of waiting on movement for that bill. I don't think we're going to get anything in the council until after the budget passes.
Right.
But I think there is still potential there for some work and advocacy, and it may be something that this committee needs to partner with the A&O committee to talk about how that fits in with a broader advocacy plan around a number of the other activities we're doing.
Okay, well, let's, I'll get back to everybody on an email as far as that's concerned. And maybe if we can get a little information from the staff about what DCPS, what the charter schools, and what OSSI is doing about teacher retention and mentoring. Just if there's a human being that's working on that. Yeah, I agree, Zach. But you know, it's worth a try. You can't get it if you don't ask.
That is right.
And then when like John Paul's talking about advocacy and outreach, I mean, we need to really become forceful advocates for teachers and for principals as far as their wanting to stay in their jobs.
So can I just repeat back what I think we discussed over the course of this meeting?
Sure.
So just going backwards, you're going to reach out, or you're going to work with John Paul and staff and reach out to OSSI to see if we can learn more information and perhaps invite them to this meeting. Caitlin and staff will work to do some state-by-state comparisons that can inform this committee's work. And then we are going to explore moving forward with a one-off event or roundtable, whatever we want to call it, to just learn more about people on the ground, APs, teachers, around the teacher retention crisis. There were some things around like mentorship and pipeline programs that I think maybe Caitlin and the staff can wrap up in their state-by-state comparisons for now. And we can revisit based on Alistair's push to kind of make sure we're remaining focused.
No, and I want to, Alistair, know I completely appreciate. I just because you're driving that big, huge car that's breaking up and stuff like that. But I understand and I appreciate and I completely agree with our focus on retention and focus on that. Alistair, you want to give us sign language or something like that?
No, great. Sounds good. Thank you.
Awesome.
Okay, you could. Thanks for trying. All right, gentlemen and lady, thank you so much. We'll get back to you, and I'll be bugging y'all this weekend for sure.